Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar introducing Symantec DSPM, a smarter approach to data security webinar. My name is Mai Zidan from MBCom marketing team. I'm delighted to be your host. This session is recorded and it will be shared with you all later. You can use the chat box at any time to share your questions. We will dedicate some time for the Q&A at the end. It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today, Namrata Shigon, Product Manager at Broadcom, and Matt Johns from Broadcom as well. They will walk us through today's topic. Over to you, Namrata.
Thanks, May. Hi, everyone. Let me just quickly share my screen. Let's do that. Yeah. Can someone confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Great. So hi, everyone. My name is Namrata Shigaon, and I'm a Symantec DLP and DSPM product manager. And today we will talk about our newly launched Symantec offering, that is Symantec Data Security Posture Management Solution, which will enable our customers to better understand their data landscape, analyze risk, and thereby secure it, right? Now it is going to be available as a new SKU, that is the DLP DSP sub SKU, as you can see on the slide here. And we will get into more details about the SKU, the solution, and benefits in the coming slides, right? So the agenda for today is that we will go over understanding, what DSPM is. It's a buzzword in the industry, but what is it and why is it getting so important? And then we will go over what we are doing about it. That is, what is Symantec DSPM and how does it solve the problem? We also have a demo, so we'll go over that too to get an idea of how it works. And then some information about the licensing and finally Q&A, right? So let's get started. So let's first start with understanding what exactly is DSPM, right? So DSPM stands for Data Security Posture Management. It is a data first cybersecurity approach with focus on securing the data rather than the periphery where the data resides. So it's about, knowing your data, understanding it, so that you can analyze the risk and accordingly have levers in place to protect it, right? So it all starts with data visibility. But why has it suddenly gained so much momentum, right? Now, that is because of multiple reasons. Firstly, because of the challenges that organizations face when it comes to data security, right? Organizations are constantly worried about where their sensitive data is it overexposed, is it at risk, who has access to it, and so on. And these questions are not answered by traditional data security tools because, firstly, cloud adoption. Cloud adoption creates a lot of blind spot, which we also call as shadow data. So, nobody knows if and where the data is sensitive. And then it's not just about visibility into the infrastructure, but also data that needs to be focused on, right? And lastly, data is everywhere, right? And this very fragmented nature makes it impossible for the security team to know and protect all the data, right? And that is where DSPM comes into picture. So the goal of a DSPM solution is to give visibility into all the data so that there are no blind spots in the organization. And once you have visibility, organizations can ensure reduced risk exposure, implement a stronger compliance program, thereby reducing their operational complexity. All in all, helping improve the organization's overall data security posture, right? Another reason for all the interest is because when we talk about data security, it is really about DLP with DSPM, because DSPM, like I said, is it's really an intelligence layer. It provides you with all the information about the data, and once you understand the data, is when you will have, you can have all the levers in place to protect it, which is what DLP offers. So in a way, DLP and DSPM go hand in hand. And in fact, DSPM is like a precursor to DLP. So, it's no longer a this or that solution requirement, rather an organization needs both. And now organizations are understanding that. So depending on the solutions available in the market, what we have seen is some organizations, go with different vendors to meet the requirement. So, they're sort of running into two parallel infrastructure, which is obviously not sustainable. And in fact, there are very few vendors who offer both DLP and DSPM solution, right? So what are we doing about it? Let's now talk about the solution that we are offering, which actually solves this problem, which is what we call as Symantec DSPM, right? So we are now offering our very own data security posture management solution, wherein we want to enable our customers to understand their data more by providing information into the data that they have. And the way we're going to be doing that is by offering a comprehensive solution to provide complete visibility and insights into all the data that you have in your SaaS and IaaS applications, that is applications that we currently support via our CASB securelets like Google Drive, Box, etc., as well as on the endpoints. So thereby enabling you to identify the risk associated with your sensitive data so that you can accordingly take measures to protect it, right? Now, when we talk about DSPM, there are many use cases that can be covered, and we completely understand that. And that is why we plan to implement this solution in phases. And this, what we are going to talk about today, is really the first phase of our DSPM solution. Of course, beyond this release, we have a long roadmap etched out where we want to incrementally build on this. But what we have right now, what's already GA'd, is what we call as the first phase of Symantec DSPM, right? So it was GA'd in May this year. So you can get your hands on it, test it, talk about it to your customers, and showcase how it helps in solving your DSPM use cases. In terms of benefits, our Symantec DSPM solution has a lot to offer, right? So we are providing a one-stop dashboard to give you like a bird's eye view of all the data across your cloud applications as well as your endpoints, so that you can, so in a way to help identify and analyze any anomalies. And along with that, access to the detailed information on each of the data assets, files as etc., is also being made available in the DSPM solution. So in a way, giving you a data centric view so that you can implement a data centric security program in your organization. Our DSPM solution is powered by industry-leading DLP solution, that is Symantec DLP. It is leveraging the same enterprise-grade detection and classification technology to identify and help you understand the kind of data that you have in your organization. So that way, you can accordingly have controls in place to protect critical data. Symantec DSPM is a cloud solution and will be accessible via the Symantec Cloud SOC Management Console. This is the same cloud console that is used for DLP. So, a single console to manage DLP and DSPM, which means easy management and a tighter integration, right? So as a Symantec DLP customer, you can fully leverage your current DLP investments, configurations to implement DSPM in your environment and build a comprehensive data security platform. And to top that, we are shipping many out of the box configurations that will help customers quickly onboard to the DSPM solution with very minimal overhead. Of course, you can definitely customize it as they wish to. So there's a lot of flexibility. Otherwise, just a few clicks and you can get on board very, very fast, right? So these are some of the key benefits that you get with our Symantec DSPM solution. So now that you have an idea of our offering, I have a recorded demo that I'd like to show to give you a glimpse of the DSPM solution. Just get to that. All right. So this is the recording that I have, and this is let me just pull this down, right? So this is the Symantec Cloud SOC Management Console, which is used to access the Symantec DSPM solution, right? So the first step is going to be to enable DSPM in your environment, which is by going into the settings page here. And here, as you see, this is the settings page that we have on CloudSock, right? And in order to enable DSPM on the cloud applications, like I said, Symantec DSPM gives coverage, visibility, and into endpoints as well as cloud applications. So first, let's look at how you can, enable DSPM on your cloud application. So let's move on. In the data security platform, you have a new setting which is introduced called the data security posture management, right? This setting enables DSPM on the cloud applications, and it also publishes all the out of the box configurations in the DSPM solution. So that are, applicable both across cloud applications as well as endpoints, right? This setting is default, disabled. It's disabled by default. You will need to enable this to initiate DSPM on the cloud applications environment as well as to get all the out-of-the-box configuration. So in a way, it's a global setting out there. Now, in order to initiate DSPM on the endpoints, we have provided some more granularity, wherein you can control visibility into certain devices. Like, for example, you may not want to get visibility into the CEO's device, right? And so that can be enabled, or that can be achieved by enabling DSPM on a group, or a group of all the endpoints, right? And that the way that can be done is via on the agent configuration level. So by default, we have the default configuration, and in the configuration, we have a new tab introduced called DSPM. So if you click that, there is this setting here, which is data security posture management. And again, this is by default disabled. As soon as the toggle is enabled here, DSPM cataloging on the associated endpoint devices is initiated. And you will start seeing all the data on the connected endpoint devices, right? Also, there is some additional setting here, that the administrator can configure to ensure that the DSPM catalog consists of relevant or useful documents, such as file types, rather than system or OS docs, right? So there's some flexibility and control in place that can be utilized, because again, we're talking about endpoint here, so there's just too much data, right? So there's some controls that are available here. Now, once you're done with that, is where we can actually start looking at where the DSPM solution is, right? So here, as you can see on the left navigation, there is a new section that's been added called DSPM, right? And all the DSPM related components will be available in this section. So we have the DSPM dashboard, we have the catalog, which gives you the listing of all the files. We have actionable insights based on what we see, and then we have tags, right? So I'll talk more about this as we get there. Let's now first start by taking a look at the dashboard, right? So this is the dashboard. It is the one-stop page that I was talking about in the slides, which gives you a high-level overview of all the data that organizations have to help them identify and analyze any anomalies, right? So here you can see there are some KPIs, there are a lot of graphs here to help you understand quickly the data distribution. And then we have what we call as the insights, which helps surface key actionable information about your data on the dashboard, thereby bringing it to your notice to take action as you may deem fit, right? Moving on, we also have a lot of graphs which actually show the top 5 of each category, as you see. So you can see the top 5 of the data sources, users, exposures, and all of that. And if you need more than top 5, you can just click on the show more button, which will give you the entire list as well, right? Now, each of these graphs that you see here in this dashboard also helps cater to key use cases. For instance, we have this a widget here or a graph here where about stale data. So many organizations, we have heard, may not even be aware of the existence of certain files that could hold sensitive information, which is, just lying in some application in their organization, files that have probably not been modified for a very long time, and what is generally called as a stale data, right? So with our DSPM solution, such information will be brought to your notice so that you can take appropriate action to protect the data, right? Now, along with that, if there is any specific data point that needs attention in this dashboard, for example, here you can see there are 9,800 publicly exposed files, right? So if you want to get more details into what those files are, you can just click on that, which will take you to the catalog, right? This is what is the catalog page, and this gives you the list of all the files that are there in the organization. Now, in this case, because I looked at exposure, which is public, this is giving me a list of all the publicly exposed files in the organization, right? Now, administrators can obviously filter, they can group by, so that they can focus on, certain files or get a high level overview of file distribution, right? Like, for example, here, if I just filter it by data source type, what it does is it gives me an idea of how the distribution of publicly exposed files is there per application or on the endpoint, right? And of course, if you really want to focus on a particular application, you can just go about and select an application here. Like, for instance, in this case, I am going to just select, say, OneDrive, right? And what will happen with that is it's going to give me a list of all the documents uh, that are publicly exposed on OneDrive, right? Now, before we proceed, I just want to take a minute to also tell you that here, as you see in the catalog, we capture all the relevant file metadata that will help customers understand their data set to take appropriate decisions to protect their sensitive data. So you can there are some columns, some attributes that are visible, and of course, if you need more details, there are some that are hidden. So based on the requirement, data can be viewed on the catalog page, right? Now, among this, of course, once you have a listing of file, if there is a particular file that you really want to get more information about, you can just go about clicking on it. And once you do that, what happens is you get a flyout with all the details about the file that was selected. So in this case here, you see what the file name is, who the owner is, what's the file size, where does it sit, um, details like whether it's encrypted or not, whether there's an external classification on it or not. Now when we say external classification, what we're trying to say is if there's an MIP label on it or not, right? So if there's any MPIP label on the file that we are able to read, we make it available here. So in this case here, this was a confidential MPIP label on this file, right? So such information is available in the details page. The next tab is what talks about classifications and profiles. Now, while most of the metadata that you see here is from the file, right? We are also using our semantic enterprise grade detection intelligence to give some additional information to our customers. So as you may know, when it comes to DSPM, data discovery and classification are its two pillars, right? So with our DSPM solution as well, we are providing the capability where you can categorize data in your DSPM catalog by assigning what we are calling as the DSPM classification and DSPM tags. We'll talk about DSPM tags in a minute, but let's first talk about DSPM classification, right? So DSPM classifications is an attribute that provides a content-based classification, which is driven by our detection technology to help you better understand what is the content that this file really holds, so that, again, like I said, you can ensure to have all the levers in place to lower the data risk, right? In fact, we have also heard a use case from some of our customers where organizations want to ensure that the MPIP label on the file is accurate or not. So with our DSPM solution, we are giving you a way to compare the label on the file, the MPIP label on the file, with the classification that we are providing, which is driven by Symantec's intelligence engine, right? Which tells you what is the content that we find on the file. For example, here we know that this file has a social security number, this file has some PII number, the content in the file violates CCPA Act, GLBA Act, and SOX Act, right? So all that information is what we provide you here. Now, please note that these classifications that we are talking about are applied on the DSPM catalog, not on the file. So we don't make any changes to the file as such, right? And then in the same page, we also show you what the profile matches are. Now, profile matches, these profiles are actually the driver for applying DSPM classification to the files on the DSPM catalog, right? So I'll talk more about how the configuration of classification goes through, but let's first take a look at what information is available in the catalog page for that file, right? So this page here talks about the classifications and profiles. The next section is about similar files. So finding files that with content which is similar to the selected file can easily be done by getting to this section. So here you can find files that are 50% similar up to all the way 100% similar. That means files that are completely duplicate, right? So here in this demo, let me just select 100%, which means duplicates. And here it gives me a list of all the files across the organization that are copies of the selected file that I have, right? So as a user, as an administrator, if you find this file to be sensitive or you find this to be a critical file, you can come to the similar file section and then find out what the duplicates are. And then, just once you do that, just download it, export it, share it with your team so that, they can take an action in just one sweep and take care of all those files, right? So that is possible with this similar files section. And the last section that we have here is what we call as the DSPM tags. Now, similar to DSPM classifications that we saw here, even the tags are applied within the DSPM solution only. And it is based on not only the content, but here we also take into account a contextual angle. For instance, there could be a file that has PII data, which as an organization might be okay for you. But if it is publicly exposed, then it is highly severe and requires some action to be taken to protect it, right? So such instances, you can bring that where you can bring in that contextual angle to get a better perspective of the data that you have in your organization, can be achieved using DSPM tags, right? So in this demo, as you can see, this file actually had a high priority tag which was automatically applied to it, right? So in terms of actions, in fact, that can be taken on this DSPM catalog entry, the first two are really about assigning and removing a tag. Now with the DSPM tags, there is an additional flexibility where you can either add a tag manually or have it driven by an underlying rule. Okay. So here, for instance, in the demo, what I'm doing by clicking on that action button is I'm actually manually applying a tag. So here I can go about, select any tag. Here I'm selecting severity sev2, click on save, and a severity sev2 tag should be applied. We can confirm that here. If you go to the DSPM tags, this was the tag which was already on it, which was an automatic tag, which means it was driven by a rule. And again, I'll show you how the tags are configured. But the severity tag that I just applied manually is also there, right? So there is some additional flexibility for DSPM administrators to ensure that the DSPM catalog is always updated with relevant information about the files, right? So those are the two actions that can be taken. And then we have DLP incidents, right? So if you're an existing Symantec DLP customer, you can also view any DLP policy violation associated with this file by clicking on that button, right? So here you can see there are two incidents that were recorded, and you get to see by getting onto the incidents page. Going back, the next activity is of activities, right? So you can also view all the activities associated with this file, like in this case, by when you click on that button, it takes you to the investigate tab where you get a detailed view of all the activities and events associated with that file. So thereby enabling you to have some connection between DLP and DSPM, right? Moving on, users can also create and save catalog information into reports, by clicking on this button here. So you can create reports which can be either private or globally shared. And here I'm creating a publicly exposed OneDrive report because that's what my file listing is, and save, and that's how the report is created. And to view the report, you can click here, and you'll be able to see all the reports. In this case, the publicly exposed report that I just created is also visible. So you can click on that, download it, share it with your team, and accordingly take action or do it for reporting purpose. So all of that is possible from the catalog page. Moving on, so this was about the catalog page. Now I briefly showed you about DSPM classifications, right? Now let's see how those DSPM classifications can be created. So there are two ways DSPM classifications can be created. The first way is while you're creating a profile. Now this page, as you may already know, this is the same profile page that is used for creating DLP policies. And as I had mentioned earlier, we want to avoid management overhead for our DLP customers. So we will be able to reuse certain components, and that's one of them is the profiles here, right? So when you're creating a profile by clicking on that, you can actually assign classification to it as well. Like in this case, you get a drop down showing you the list of classifications. You can click anything that's applicable. And in case if you don't find a classification of your choice, you can actually create a classification on the fly right here, like I'm creating for marketing, right? So once that classification is associated, you can just, create a rule, which is a typical way of creating a, sorry, let me just go back, which is a typical way of creating a profile, and that's it, you're done, right? So here, this was the marketing, the profile that we just created, which had a DSPM classifications associated with it, right? So that's one way of creating a classification. The other way is using a new page that we have actually introduced here called DSPM classification. This is a new page that's available now where you can perform all the CRUD operations on all the DSPM classifications, right? So by default, we are shipping a lot of out of the box classifications. So that as soon as customers get on board and the DSPM catalog starts getting built, then the catalog entries, that is the file listing, will have some classification associated, so that they can have a head start to it. And like I said earlier, they can obviously go ahead and either use the out of the box ones, which is what is available here, or they can just disable them and create some new ones based on their requirement, right? So here, if you just take a look, this was the marketing classification that I had created, and that's the profile associated to it. So you get that information here as well as on the profile page. So two ways on creating classifications, but that's the way you can configure it. Moving on, let me now show you how tags are configured. So again, for tags as well, we have a new page that we have created here, which is called the DSPM tags, right? And this is where you get to see all the list of the DSPM tags that are created and, again, perform all CRUD operations on them, right? By default, there is a priority tag that we had shipped. And here you can see that, there are certain rules associated with this tag. So that this tag would be applied when the rule that is defined is triggered. For example, here we are looking at if the data is PII and the exposure is public, then apply a high priority tag, right? And similarly, there is another rule saying if the data is PII but the exposure is, say, external, just apply a priority medium tag, right? So that's how this a tag with rules can be created. And similarly, a new tag can also be created like this one. And here you can, just about add a name, description, add multiple values that you want to have, add a rule or not. If you do not add a rule, it basically creates a dummy tag, which means you will need to go and manually apply it just the way we did in the demo to associate it to a file in the catalog, right? But again, just reminding, all the tags and classifications are applied on the DSPM solution only, not on the file, right? So that's how you go about creating a tag. Now let's go about and talk about another important capability that we have introduced, which we are calling as insights. Again, this is a new page that is introduced within the DSPM section, right? Insights are critical information about your data that is being surfaced on the dashboard, to help customers better understand the data in their organization. Basically, to identify risks and anomalies and accordingly help them focus on areas that may need an action or intervention to better manage the data and align to the organization's goals, right? So this page here shows you the list of all the insights that have been configured. And like I said earlier, we are also shipping some out-of-the-box insights, and all of these are actually out-of-the-box insights that we are shipping, right? The idea again being so that when you land on the dashboard, based on the data that you have some information available as soon as you start with the DSPM solution, right? Again, you can disable them, enable them, create new ones, and accordingly those will show up on the dashboard. So let's now take a look at one of the insights. So let me just open up existing insight out here. So this one, if you just click on this and click on edit, you get to see the default insight. So here you get to define the name, that is the insight name that shows up on the dashboard. And then you can say what the severity is, whether this insight is a high severe or medium or low severity one. By default, they're all enabled. You can, of course, disable them. And then the next section is really about description. Now, this is the place where you can actually play around a little to explain a bit more about the insight. Like, for example, here I'm talking about with some placeholders telling the number of data sources that have the number of PII files that are being publicly exposed, right? So that kind of information surfaces in your, insight, what we call as an insight card on the dashboard. And I'll show you how that shows up in the insight on the dashboard page as well, right? Now, then after that is what comes as the evaluation criteria, right? And of course the threshold. So basically these are the triggers for the insight. For instance, this insight will show up when there is at least one data source with at least one file that is meeting this evaluation criteria. So we're talking about the the number of files, minimum number of files, as well as what the criteria is. So this insight is triggered to show up on your dashboard when this particular criteria is met, which means the file should be PII and publicly exposed, and which is what you're showing up on your dashboard. So as the number of your files increases, you get to count of how many data sources actually have files and how many files that have that are PII as well as are publicly exposed, right? These are all configurable. So, this is just something default that we have configured, like I said, to give you a head start. But on similar lines, you can also create an insight. Like this is the page that shows up. You can just fill in those details as may be required, right? Now, this page that you see is where you can not only manage your insights, but you can also get the key metrics associated with the insight. Like, for example, if you just click on one of the insights here, what's going to happen is it'll open this flyout giving you details about this particular insight. Like, for instance, there are about 500 affected data sources with about 1,000 plus files. And it gives you a list of what those data sources are and the number of files associated to every data source, right? The distribution is also here. So you can click on this and it will actually show you which are those 818 files that are publicly exposed to PII files in this particular data source, right? So if you need that kind of filtering or you need that kind of detailed information, you can get that information here and you can click on download and, like I said, share it with your team if you want to take any action around it, right? So that's how you configure and see the metrics associated with this insights that are configured, right? Now, let's take a look at how these insights actually show up on the dashboard, like I was saying. So insights are what you see here. These show up in this carousel layout, right? And what we call these are the insight cards. So like I said, here, you get to see the insight name. This is the static text that was there along with a description, which gives you a little flexibility where you can, specify what is the number of numbers associated in terms of the data sources and files, and obviously the severity here, right? Which is either a red, orange, or a green, depending on if it's high, medium, or low, right? So that's how these insights are. And if you need, of course, you can just, like I said, it's a carousel, you can select anything. If you need more details about to know what those files are, just click on know more, and here you will get a list of all those files that meet that particular insight. So one way is, like I showed you during the configuration, that you can get the list of the files. Second way is by clicking on know more, which will basically show you the list of those files, right? So those are the files associated with the insight. Now let's go back to the dashboard. Now these insights in the dashboard are all configurable. So if you click on the configure button, for instance, you can choose the insights that should actually show up on the dashboard, right? So I have all of them configured. And then, if you want to configure any new ones or edit existing ones, just click on explore all, which will again take you back to the insights configuration page, right? So that's about insights, a very powerful capability to bring out actionable information right there in front of the dashboard for administrator to take tasks, right? Lastly, going back to the dashboard, there is an ability to filter and focus on the data distribution as well. So for instance, if your organization has multiple teams where they really want to focus on applications under their command, they can just filter it, like in this case, to focus on the application of interest. And what will happen with that is the entire dashboard will then refresh and give you an overview of that selected application. Like for instance, here I'm clicking on endpoint and you see the KPI, the graph distribution, all of that is now refreshed, showing me data which is applicable for the endpoints only, right? So even in fact, along with that, with the DSPM dashboard, we're also giving some flexibility where if a DSPM user wants, they can create a personalized dashboard to focus on, specific use cases or, specific applications. They can do that. So the way you can do that is by going ahead and clicking on create. When you click on create, you get a list of all the widgets or graphs that are available for selection. In the future, we will be adding more widgets and graphs so users can actually choose what they want to and remove the ones that they don't want in their personalized dashboard. So anyhow, here you can just see all the listing. You can just select a couple of them based on the requirement. Like I'm just selecting a few here. Click on OK, and a personalized dashboard can be created. You can rearrange the layout the way you want to do it, and then just add a name to it. And that is pretty much it. When you click on that, you get to see what your personalized dashboard was with the list of widgets that are created, right? So that brings me to the end of the demo. And like I said, this is just a glimpse to give you an idea of how the DSPM solution works and is, right? So that's what I have for the demo. Moving on, let's go back to the slides, right? And we were here. All right, so I have a couple of more slides to just give you some more information, right? Now, going back to, going back to the DSPM with DLP concept that I spoke about a couple of slides back, where I was talking that, the reason why DSPM is gaining a lot of attention is because data security is really about DLP with DSPM, right? So even from a data security platform perspective, and when we talk about semantic solution, our ability to combine DLP and DSPM really helps to create a data security platform that has the ability to identify risk and enforce policies, thereby offering a complete data security platform to our customers. Like I said, we have the ability to connect the dots between visibility on the DSPM side and enforcement on the DLP side. But we leverage a proven enterprise grade detection engine for both DSPM and DLP. So we are in this really unique position in the market of having, pretty much the industry recognized gold standard for a detection engine. We are extremely strong in that. And even when, in fact, we have spoken to our analysts, they have been extremely positive about the fact that we're using this technology that the industry already knows and loves, and to go ahead with DSPM with that as well, right? And so essentially, what we are able to do is, unify, discovery, classification, posture, visibility, and DLP enforcement within this shared data security architecture. So there's no need for, the parallel infrastructure that I mentioned before, that generally organizations are opting for as they go for different vendors, or processing data multiple times, right? Because scanning happens in one single pass for both DSPM, DLP when we're talking about semantic solutions. So that really gives us a very strong differentiation in the market. So, semantic DSPM and DLP is the power that you need to implement a data security platform in your organization. Now that we know what the DSPM solution is, what the benefits are, and of course you've seen a demo as well, what I want to conclude with is some information about the licensing, right? Like I said, DSPM solution is already GA'd. It is available in the, since May this year. In order to get your hands on this solution, you will need to get the DSPM SKU, right? So the SKU is available as of the May price book, and it is this DLP DSP sub. It is an add-on SKU, so it requires certain base SKUs in order to provision the DSPM SKU. So, in order to get the DSPM solution, let's talk in two parts. If you want to get the DSPM solution for visibility across cloud applications, that is applications that we currently support via SecureLets, customers will need to have either a DLP cloud bundle or at least the SecureLets SKU, that is the SaaS and or IaaS SKU and CDS configured. Now, please note, DSPM is a cloud managed solution, and the cloud detection server associated with the SecureLet must be cloud managed for DSPM to work, right? For endpoint DSPM, the base queue required is the EP SaaS queue, which is the DLP CDS endpoint sub, which was, I think, introduced last year in August. So those are the SKUs that you require independently. But if customers want to implement DSPM across their cloud applications as well as endpoint, they will need to have all the following SKUs that have been listed here. Or if they want specific ones, the ones that are specifically required for the cloud application and the endpoint, right? So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I know we are well above the time, so any questions for me?
Yes, we have received many questions actually.
Okay,
but
great.
thank you, Matt. He was answering some of them.
I think I've tried to answer most of them. The main one that was coming up, I think, was kind of the on-prem capabilities, and I know that we've got obviously the endpoint to deal with data at rest on the laptops and desktops. I think people are asking whether that might be extended at some point to on-prem storage. I think that one came up a few times. I think I've pretty much answered most of the others.
Okay, great. So do you want me to answer the on-prem question?
Yeah, I kind of left that one to you because it's more futures, isn't it, and roadmaps and things.
Sure. Yeah. So on-prem is something which is in our backlog, but currently it's not tied to a release. We have right now gone out with the cloud coverage as well as the endpoint. But what we would like to hear is if there is a demand for on-prem, we are absolutely game to offer that as well. But we would first like to see if there's a demand around it and which customers are asking, and accordingly we'll work on it. I hope that answers the question. Anything else?
I think that was it. There's a question here just popped in. Is there an NFR SKU for this?
Yeah. So right now we don't have an NFR SKU for this, but it is something we definitely plan to offer in the future. All right.
Okay, I think I've answered all the questions, and I think I've been fairly accurate. But we'll see. I guess if anyone else has anything else, I guess you can shout out or add it to the chat.
Yeah, I still have got some time. Yeah.
Right. Actually, I have a question here. I know I see a lot of things about on-premise, DSPM on-prem. So I would like to know on-prem is where exactly are they looking for coverage? Is it file shares? I think some more details around that would be required for us to accordingly prioritize and work on that. So I don't know if the webinar is the right place, or we can probably connect offline for that to get more information.
Right, great. We have received another question. All of our customers asking us about the SPM on-prem in case A in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. I completely understand. And like I said, I will need more details on what exactly they mean by on-prem. Is it file shares, or what repositories they're looking for? And we can talk more about that.
Any AI capabilities to help with manual effort?
There isn't really any manual effort, to be honest, because like I said, we are shipping a lot of out of the box, our classifications and all the information that is really required to help customers understand. All they need to do is just enable it, set it up, and that's it. They're good to go. We do definitely plan to use AI in our solution so that we can actually inform customers what the file is about. Like right now we are talking about the content, we have the classifications. In the future we also plan to use the AI to more accurately define or specify what the file is about and things like that. But like I said, there's a lot of it is really already taken care, so it's all automated. Just need to enable it and able to go.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
I think that's it for now. Can the SPM compare or plan to replace the need of data insights?
Well, data insight does a lot of other things. It's not really a DSPM solution. I think data insight vendor itself is coming with another DSPM solution. So DSPM and data insight are different. DSPM is more data centric security, whereas data insight is about giving more information about the data. Whereas right now, like I said, there are a lot of use cases that can be solved with DSPM. It can tell you things about what the file is, what the data is, whether it's secure or not, and as well as things like where all has the file moved, like data lineage, what transformations it's gone through and things like that, which is not something that data insight covers. Yeah. How can DSPM help protect sensitive data in organizations that use AI-driven applications? Very good question. So like I said, with our current DSPM solution that's in the phase 1, we actually give you all the information about the data that you have, right? So it will tell you whether the data is sensitive or not, and accordingly you can have levers in place to ensure, that is DLP, to ensure that such sensitive data is not touched by those AI web applications. As well as whatever information is received. So that way, this gives you complete visibility and control in place. After you tag a file, how long does the tag stay in the catalog? How would you remove a tag? So as soon as you apply a tag on the catalog. You're not applying the tag on the file. You're applying the DSPM tag on the DSPM solution. It stays in the DSPM solution as long as you don't remove it, or if it is controlled, if it is automatically applied based on a rule, if the file content changes or the rules associated to the tag change, then the tag would either be reapplied or removed, or you can manually do it. But unless something is done, that doesn't really change. I hope that answers the question. And then I think I see one more. Was there another question that popped up? Did I miss something?
I think that was the last questions now we received.
Okay, great. I think, yeah, so that's about it, right? I hope I'm not missing any question.
Did we answer Ahmed's question? Which components from DLP Cloud that are prerequisite for the DSPM?
Right. So for DSPM on the cloud application, if you need from a SKU perspective, you will either require the entire DLP cloud bundle, or you will require at least the secured SKU, which is the SaaS or the IaaS. So basically, if you have the SaaS SKU, you'll see, you'll have coverage across your SaaS applications. If you have IaaS, you'll have coverage across IaaS. If you have both, you'll have coverage across both. So as long as you have that along with CDS, or if you have the DLP cloud bundle, which also includes the CDS, you're good to go.
Great. So after file tagging, can we enforce policies to apply MIP labels?
Right. So that is something which we are definitely looking at as a roadmap item, but that's not possible today. Any more questions?
I think we covered all. So if we missed any question, please rewrite it here on the chat box. Let's wait for a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Right, I think that's okay. On one of your slides, you mentioned a cloud detection server is required. Please explain further.
Yeah. So like I said, for DSPM, it's about data discovery, which means it's scanning. For any scanning solution, you will require the securelets and the CDS. And that's the reason it's one of the prerequisites if you are, if you need a cloud application coverage for DSPM. That's the basic rule for it. So either you have the cloud bundle, which means you have everything, or you have individual SKUs, then in that case, the securelet or SaaS along with CDS. But if you need an endpoint, then you just need the EP SaaS SKU that I spoke about as a prerequisite and the DSPM SKU, and you're good to go.
All right, I think that's it. And in case you have any further questions or you'd like to request a demo, please reach us at info@mbcom, and we will be more than happy to help you out. So thank you so much today, Namrata, for such amazing presentation, and thank you all for joining us today. Before you leave, we kindly ask you to complete the short survey you will get, and this session is recorded as mentioned, and it will be shared with you all. We truly appreciate your time, and we look forward to welcome you in our future session. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.